These are the verbiage tied to the process flow we just went through. The key is we're going to enter and book our order. Our attributes will default based on the assignment rule setup and the fact that our setups were completed relative to the enable, fulfillment, acceptance. Once we ship confirm, it's good to know that our workflow line statuses transition from awaiting shipping to either pending pre-billing or pending post-billing acceptance. The acceptance or rejection is completed either programmatically or manually, depending if we're doing implicit or explicit. Then we can go view our acceptance details on our sales order line or within the portal under the order status tab. And then finally, if we have access, we can view our invoicing and revenue recognition information on the appropriate receivables side of the fence and see if there's any questions or concerns just for viewing to know. Okay, now we're actually going to go over the process steps for each of the processes for pre-billing and post-billing. We're going to start out with pre-billing acceptance and then go over the explicit side and the implicit side. Now keep in mind, the processes are almost identical. The only difference is how you perform the acceptance. The other steps are identical. So we'll go through them, and as I've highlighted on the slides, the only differences in terms of the processes is the blue lines, the ones that are highlighted for you. So once we come out of ship confirm, the workflow line status changes to pending pre-billing acceptance from awaiting shipping. So from that point on, because it's an invoice removal event dependency, both the invoicing and revenue recognition will be deferred because it's pre-billing before invoicing. Then, systematically or programmatically, the acceptance would need to be completed. In this example, it would be explicitly, so it could be manually or programmatically via the OIP or the program's order import process API. And from that point, once the acceptance is completed, the lines would transition to close. At that point, the information gets sent to AR, so the invoice can get created. And the thing to know in the transferring of information to AR is the acceptance date will now be your invoice date in AR. And the reason I make a point of that is on your invoice to your customer, you could have an invoice date of March 7th, because that could be the acceptance date, the date it was actually accepted in the system. And then your ship date could be February 5th. For whatever reason, it took a long time to get accepted or a long time for the customer to get the services delivered. So you could have a date difference if that matters to your business at all. From that point on, both the invoice generation and the revenue recognition happen consecutively. There's no dependencies, no holds, no contingencies. They happen one after the other. Here's a quick review of the implicit. Again, everything is exactly the same as the previous slide except for the method of recording the acceptance. We transition through ship confirm with the same resulting workflow line status of pending pre-billing acceptance. Both your invoicing and revenue recognition are deferred by default. Waits in the queue for the implicit acceptance to be performed. And remember, on implicit, it's programmatic only, and it's based on an expiration date value. So it will go out and validate in that queue until the expiration date has passed, and then send that data through and flag it as accepted. Once it's accepted, your line will go to closed, and just as before, your acceptance date will be your invoice date in AR, which could result in differing values for your ship date and your invoice date depending on your expiration value. Both your invoice generation and your revenue recognition happen consecutively for the pre-bill processing. Here is a screenshot showing the initial stages of an acceptance order for pre-billing implicit. You'll notice on the sales order line view on the main tab, we are before ship confirm. So as normal, standard workflow, it's awaiting shipping. Once we complete ship confirm, the workflow status transitions into the pending pre-billing acceptance. This would let a user know that it's waiting to be accepted. It's not going to actually invoice or recognize revenue until the acceptance is completed. On the right screen, the Insert, the Deliveries tab, this is just a visual to show you that it's shipped and how the workflow transitions to a different status with the acceptance in place. Now we're looking at the workflow, which to me is key in this situation. Because normally when things are stuck at invoicing, you're always wondering why they haven't invoiced, why they haven't invoiced. This is a detailed view of the enhancements made to the workflow for Release 12 for this functionality. For pre-billing, remember it's pre-invoicing, before we bill. So we stop workflow process at invoice interface eligible. If we drill in, which the top line is, the top view is the initial overview of workflow, the bottom picture is the zoom in of the invoice interface block. And it shows us that we're at invoice interface pending acceptance. So that means as soon as we accept it, whether it's implicitly or explicitly, internally or externally accepted, then it actually would go through the appropriate invoice interface block in workflow and continue on.